Without knowing these things about UX, you can waste days or even weeks while trying to make sense of it all. What is UX? Well, let's break it down first. U stands for user and X stands for experience. I believe they used X instead of E because X makes everything sound cool. UX is also a job that used to be very well paid between 2009 and 2015, and it's still pretty well paid, but just not as much. Many people want to learn to do UX because it feels easier than coding, and it's still a pretty good tech job. So what is UX? What does user experience stand for?
What doesn't it stand for?
We're gonna bust the first myth right away. They say that UX is about making the experience better for the user, and this is just not true. Companies hire UX designers to make more money. That's the priority. Of course, the user has to be somewhat satisfied and definitely not lost, because otherwise they won't be paying us. The goal of the designers nowadays is to squeeze the users out of their money without pushing them too far so they won't go to the competitors. UX in 2024 is very, very different to what it was when it exploded in 2009. And I'm gonna talk you through all of the things that changed, all the things that you need to know after we deal with the abbreviations, because there's just too many of them. We're talking digital products here, apps and websites mostly, and UX is how people experience that digital product. But on top of that, it's also about how the business makes money. CX is customer experience, and that is everything that also happens around the brand. It includes UX, but also includes stuff like how friendly your support people are or how funny the ad slogans are. So basically everything the brand does. UI is a subset of UX, meaning it's a part of UX, and user interface is all that stuff that we directly interact with. It's supposed to be clear, easy to understand, easy to follow, pretty much logical, and a little bit expected because we kind of expect things to work as other things that we already know, but it also needs a little bit of its own unique style and a tiny splash of delight. And many designers start with a lot of questions. Some of the ones that I got the most are: how much UX do I have to know if I want to purely do UI design? How much UI should I know if I want to be a front-end developer? How much of both UX and UI should I know to hire the right people to help me build my startup? Let's talk about sticky notes. Do UX designers still use a lot of sticky notes for everything? No. Right now they're done by maybe 1% of the companies, and it's very likely that you will never have to use them at all. When searching for UX, you will find a lot of complex flows, flow diagrams, diamond-shaped diagrams, and all the complexity of it is pretty confusing and daunting for the beginner. It feels like it really is rocket science. And if you want me to explain all of those things as well in a separate video, like this video and leave a comment telling me that you really want to know that. But what UX really is a simple 3-step formula. Design, test, repeat. It works like this. You design something like an app. Then you test it on the users to see if they are not completely confused by it and if they can accomplish the tasks that you want them to accomplish. And then you tweak and redesign and then test on the users again. It's an ongoing process that goes round and round and round and round, and it practically never stops because there is always something to add or always something to improve. Wait, isn't that completely wrong? Some UX gurus will argue that you need to research first and then do design, and there is some merit to that, obviously. It makes sense to first know what you want to design. But the thing is that in 2024, things have changed a little. Most of modern design is taking something that already exists, modifying it a little bit, slapping our colors and fonts on it, and calling it a day. We don't really have to research how to make a specific functionality anymore. We might have to research if it's even needed, but that's a whole other story. At this point, we simply know a lot of the good UX and UI patterns, and yeah, we kind of skip some steps. So do we still do research? Well, keep watching to find out. So how does UX work? Well, it's a very simple process that goes from abstract to concrete. The abstract part can be something like, we want to have more signups in the app. So then the last step, the concrete one, is the final designed or possibly even coded version of the interface that's supposed to increase those signups. So we start with the abstract, then we design, and then we test it, and then we realize that signups actually dropped even further because we forgot about some things like a button that's impossible to click. So we make a few more adjustments, we add a better copy that some people took 2 weeks to write, and we usually arrive at a very similar level of signups as before, but at least we did a lot of the work. And obviously in some good scenarios we can actually improve it by a few percent. This is fine. UX is also research, but don't worry, you don't need a lab coat, thick glasses and sticky notes. What you probably will need is the 3 main methods that everybody in the industry uses, and then yeah, they kind of skip everything else. Of course, if you are in that 1% of very loud UX heavy companies that talk about it all over social media, you will do more than that. But they all give us the impression that a lot more research is being done because all of the other companies just keep building things and doing the minimal research necessary, and they don't really have time to talk about it. Competitive analysis. What it means is that you look at your direct competitors and indirect competitors, which means apps that do something similar but not exactly that, and then you look at the ideas that you might steal or copy into your own product. Number 2, surveys. Of course, the best way to understand what the problems are is to ask the users, and you can ask them in short little surveys, or you can just read the comments that they leave in the app stores or anywhere online. And then you can distill those comments into some patterns that repeat a lot. So if a lot of people are complaining that they are having problems with some specific issue, then you probably should fix that issue. And number 3, visual analytics. Of course, instead of asking people, you can just observe them and see what they're doing wrong, what they're struggling with, because sometimes they can't really articulate what they want and what they want solved. But by seeing what they click on and what they don't click on and how much time they spend on specific sections of the product, you will be able to guesstimate a little bit on how to modify it and fix it to make it perform better. We also used to do wireframes back in 2009. And yeah, those were funny days because you were basically scribbling some very hard to read things on a whiteboard that almost nobody ever used. Then it kind of progressed into low fidelity wireframes, but almost nobody does them anymore. We do them very, very rarely once we know that there is some complex things to be designed, and even the client or the CEO is not fully sure how they want it designed. So let's put all of that together. You might want to work for that 1% of very UXy companies. The issue is that it's really difficult to get hired at those, and they're not really that great of an employer. But you might want that, that's fine. Of course, then you need a lot more of the process, a lot more understanding, a much bigger portfolio, better case studies and all that. For the 99% of all the real companies that are just building apps and websites, you will just need a couple of the things that I mentioned in this video. And the most important thing of the UX job, and in fact of pretty much any job, maybe except for a lighthouse keeper, is communicating with other people. Because you need to be able to clearly articulate your ideas and explain why you did something the way you did. And trust me, I battled stakeholders for years on different products. It's really difficult at first, but you get better and better at it. You need to use data, you need to be clear, you need to be non-invasive, but you need to be firm and strict and very confident in what you're doing. And once you repeat that process for a few years, you're gonna grow into better clients, more money, and even more confidence, which is good. So that is the basic state of UX for 2024. I also wrote a book about it. Check it out. If you want me to dive deeper into the next stages of UX design or explain it in a lot more detail, just going through every single process in a single video, let me know in the comments, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and that way we'll both have a beautiful day. Cheers.